What broke him? In October AD 37, Rome's Golden Emperor collapsed into a fever that nearly killed him at 24. He survived, but the man who rose from that sickbed wasn't the same one who lay down. Within 4 years, he declared war on the ocean, built a bridge of ships across the Bay of Baiae, and demanded to be worshipped as a living god. Then his own bodyguards carved him down in a palace corridor. His name was Gaius. Rome called him Caligula, Little Boots, a nickname he earned as a toddler in his father's army camps on the Rhine. His father was Germanicus, the empire's favorite general, the handsome war hero every legionary would follow into fire. The boy wore miniature armor and marched beside the standards, dust coating his small leather sandals, soldiers laughing as he saluted them. That childhood ended in AD 19, when Germanicus died in Syria, poisoned, most Romans believed, on the orders of the old emperor Tiberius. What followed was slower than war and crueler than fever. His mother, Agrippina, was exiled to a rock island and starved to death. His 2 older brothers, Nero Caesar and Drusus, were destroyed under Tiberius, one driven to suicide, the other locked in a palace cellar and left to chew the stuffing from his own mattress. By the time the boy was a man, every close relative he had was dead, and he had learned the oldest survival lesson in Rome: smile at the man who killed your family. He was summoned to the island of Capri, where Tiberius kept court among cliffs and cold sea wind, and for 6 years he served the old emperor's shadow, quiet, watchful, attentive. On the 16th of March, AD 37, Tiberius finally died. The 24-year-old walked off Capri into the loudest welcome Rome had given any man in a generation. Senators wept. Citizens crowned his statues with flowers. In the Forum, they sacrificed 160,000 animals to the gods in the first 3 months of his reign. Rome called him sidus nostrum, our star. He cut taxes, recalled exiles, silenced the treason courts, and gave the people back their games. For 7 months, the marble city glowed. Then, in the autumn of that same year, he fell sick. The fever came on fast. Within days, he was sweating through his bedsheets in the palace on the Palatine Hill, eyes glassy, skin grey, surrounded by physicians who bled him and burned herbs and ran out of answers. Rome panicked. In the streets below, citizens tore their clothes. Some offered their own lives to the gods in trade for his, vows written on wax tablets and left at temple doors. For weeks he lay on the edge of death. Then, slowly, the fever broke. The emperor lived. But the people who saw him after said something was wrong. He slept 2 hours a night and wandered the corridors before dawn. He flinched at sunlight. He stared through visitors mid-sentence, then laughed at jokes no one had told. Philo of Alexandria, who met him within 2 years of that illness, wrote that the man who recovered was not the same man who had fallen ill. The ancient sources do not preserve a clinical list of symptoms. No modern doctor can diagnose him across 2,000 years of silence. But the first clear sign came less than a year later. His favorite sister, Drusilla, died suddenly in the summer of AD 38. He shaved his head, forbade laughter in public, and declared her a goddess called Panthea. He made senators swear oaths on her divinity. He ordered a state of mourning so absolute that citizens were executed for bathing on the wrong day. His grief had teeth, and the man Rome had loved was already gone. The first theory modern historians reach for is lead poisoning. Roman wine was often sweetened with sapper, grape syrup boiled for hours in lead-lined pots until it turned into a dark, clinging sugar. Elite households drank it daily. Water ran through lead pipes. Noble women painted their faces with white lead. Chronic exposure produces what the ancients could not name: paranoia, delusions of grandeur, tremors, a mind slowly unhooking from reality. It fits Rome's whole ruling class, not one man, which is why the diagnosis remains a suspect, not a verdict. Others have pointed to encephalitis, epilepsy, hyperthyroidism, insomnia, alcoholism, the weight of inherited trauma, or the simpler poison of absolute power. No theory has ever won the argument, but the symptoms kept arriving. In AD 39, he ordered the Bay of Baiae bridged with ships. 2 Roman miles of merchant vessels lashed together, planks nailed across their decks, earth poured on top to make a road of dirt across open water. He crossed it in Alexander the Great's breastplate, lifted from the conqueror's tomb in Egypt. An astrologer named Drusilla had once told Tiberius the boy would sooner ride a horse across the Bay of Baiae than become emperor. Caligula rode a horse across it. The prophecy had been mocked. The treasury bled. In AD 40, he marched his legions north to invade Britain. At the Channel, the invasion collapsed. What Suetonius and Dio say happened next is either madness or theatre, and historians are still arguing. He drew up his soldiers on the beach in battle order, loaded the catapults, then ordered the men to gather seashells from the surf. Spoils, he said, of his war against the ocean. Whichever it was, the men obeyed. That same year, he stabled a racehorse named Incitatus in a marble stall with an ivory manger, and, Suetonius reports, joked about making him consul. Senators were not sure which was more dangerous, the joke or the possibility that it was not one. Then came the crisis the sources agree on. He ordered a colossal statue of himself, dressed as Jupiter, placed in the Holy of Holies of the temple in Jerusalem. Philo was there, at the head of a Jewish embassy, and left a terrified account. Josephus confirms it. The province nearly rose in revolt. Only his death stopped the war. He had appeared in the Senate in golden sandals and the costume of Venus. He had opened palace rooms to display senators' own wives, now his. He had burned through Tiberius's 2.7 billion sesterces, a treasury built over 23 years, in under a single year, Suetonius says. Rome was rich. Rome was empty. Rome was afraid. One man finally decided to stop it. Cassius Chaerea was a veteran Praetorian officer, a soldier who had fought in the Germanic wars and carried scars the emperor noticed. Caligula had begun handing Chaerea the daily password for the palace guard, and every day, as a joke, the password was something sexual. Priapus, Venus, words that traveled through the ranks and came back as laughter. Chaerea was 60, a Roman soldier of the old school, and every morning the emperor turned him into a punchline in front of his own men. According to Josephus, writing about 50 years later from the best-placed sources, Chaerea began gathering co-conspirators in secret, other praetorians, senators, members of the imperial household. They chose the final day of the Palatine Games. On the 24th of January, AD 41, Caligula finished watching a morning performance and walked alone into a covered corridor on the Palatine Hill, heading toward a private bath. The plotters were waiting in the cold stone dark. Chaerea struck first, between the emperor's shoulder and neck. The chroniclers say the rest, a crowd of blades in a narrow space, added about 30 wounds. That number is literary, not forensic. The sources count in tradition, not autopsies. When it was finished, the last of Germanicus's sons lay face down on cold stone. He was 28 years old. The killing didn't stop with him. The same conspirators hunted down his wife, Caesonia, and ran her through in the palace, then turned on the cradle of their 1-year-old daughter, Julia Drusilla, and smashed her head against a wall. No descendant would rise to avenge him. Caligula's direct household ended in that corridor. The Praetorians, who had just murdered their emperor, scattered through the palace looking for what came next. In a curtained alcove, One of them found a trembling 49-year-old man hiding behind a drape. Caligula's uncle Claudius, dismissed by the family for decades as a stammering, limping fool. The soldiers dragged him out, set him on their shoulders, and carried him into the camp. The Senate spent a day arguing about restoring the Republic. The Praetorians ended the argument by acclaiming Claudius emperor before sundown. The first thing Claudius did was hunt down the assassins. Cassius Chaerea, the man who had killed a tyrant, was executed for killing a Caesar. Rome understood the message. No senator had risen, no legion had marched. A tyrant had fallen, and the throne had simply changed hands. The fever of AD 37 had rewritten the empire. The corridor of AD 41 sealed the rewrite. The man who had declared war on the sea died on the same cold floor as any murdered Roman. And the Principate, which had hoped to become gentler under Germanicus's son, had just learned it could not be undone from inside its own palace. Claudius ruled 13 years. Nero followed him. The Julio-Claudian line staggered on another 27 years before dying out entirely. Historians still argue over what actually broke Caligula: toxin, tumor, grief, trauma, or the simple chemical weight of absolute power. No one has ever won the argument. What do you think rewrote him? The fever or the throne? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe for more of history unfiltered.